key to prosperity is creativity. You have to be committed to what you're going toward, but you have to be very flexible as you go. You can't be afraid of failing. Sometimes you have to admit defeat, but most of the time you can't give up.
How would you define happiness?
People equate happiness with pleasure. People equate happiness with lack of challenge. It's ephemeral. Terrible things happen in this world. People grow ill, people die. So if your happiness is conditional, then you may have it for a while, but you can never rely on it. You'll always be insecure. True happiness is really freedom, not freedom to only get what I want, to be always free inside no matter what happens. That even when the most unspeakable bad things happen to me, understanding that I'm free to choose happiness.
Welcome back to Mulligan Brothers, and today I sit down with Asha and Nayaswami from the Ananda community. So many of you received the first episode so well, and this was actually one of my favorite conversations where we sit down and we talk about the ultimate guide to happiness. She breaks it down in a completely different way than expected and talks about how we can find genuine and true happiness and be happy. There's some really practical lessons and teachings that we can apply to our life. So please make sure you're listening and connected to this one. If you want early access to all of these episodes, please make sure that you subscribe to Spotify. You can listen to this on your way home from work, or you can even watch on the premium video content, all linked down below. Please leave us a review if you're enjoying the Spotify, or if you're enjoying Mulligan Brothers, make sure you're subscribed and you've hit that notification bell as well, so you know when the next episodes are coming. And I want to say a massive thank you to our sponsors and everyone who makes this possible, who's joined as a Patreon member and has supported us at mulliganbrothers.com, where you can get the journals and the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been involved in that. You ensure that the mission of Inspire Change can happen in the face of traditional media and all these big corporations trying to keep the small creators down. We want to try and keep it an independent voice and amplify voices like Asha and many other people. Let's dive into this amazing episode and go on a journey of spirituality and how to find happiness. Just by name, just introduce yourself for those who might not have watched any of the videos so far.
I'm Asha Nayaswami, and we are on the patio of the Temple of Self-Realization of Ananda, Palo Alto.
And something I haven't asked yet, and I think it was really interesting to me is, and our audience, is what does Nayaswami mean?
The word Naya means new. So Nayaswami is a new order of the ancient Swami order. The ancient Swami order was created by Adi Shankaracharya, who's a very famous sage in India, many centuries ago. And at the time that he created that order, it was a revolution to organize the Swamis in this way. And there were many rules for behavior and the way it was organized and who was in charge. It was magnificent and has endured for these centuries. But many of the rules that were assigned to the Swamis no longer are relevant in the way that people are living spiritual life and spiritual renunciation now. For example, you could never say more than 3 days in any one place so that you wouldn't become attached to anything. You couldn't handle money. You couldn't have money. And you just can't do that in our modern society. So Swami Kriyananda felt profoundly inspired by God to take the fundamental of what the Swami order represents, which is an absolute dedication to the spiritual life. And the Western model is the monk or nun or Catholic priest. The Eastern model is the wandering sadhu, the wandering monk. And that's exactly what it is. And this is exactly the same. The vows have the same power and the same dedication and the same completeness, but it's more accommodating to the age we live in. Among other things, married couples do not necessarily have to renounce their relationship. They can both become Nayaswamis together. They still follow the celibate renunciate lifestyle, but they don't have to renounce the friendship and the partnership that they have, which is actually more of a return. The ancient rishis in India, the saints and sages, many of them were married. You didn't, in higher ages, You don't have to separate spirituality out from ordinary life. One of the things that happens in higher ages is that spirituality can be integrated. So the idea of the Nayaswami order was to lay a pattern that could be followed into this new age that wouldn't have all those arcane rules that are mostly not followed at all because they're just completely impractical. And as part of the symbol of the difference, the traditional Swami order, they wear orange, which is the color of fire. And what that represents is all the attachments and all the material things that you have, you're throwing them into the fire and you're burning them up. So the focus is more on what you're renouncing, which was appropriate in an age where materiality was, it was impossible to be spiritual in an ordinary context. You just repudiated everything that related to everyday life and burned it up. The blue color is the color of Krishna, but it's not really Krishna. It's the color of the spiritual eye that you see when you meditate. There's a beautiful blue circle which represents Christ or Krishna consciousness. And so the blue color affirms our aspiration and what we're going to become. So rather than looking at renunciation, we're looking at realization. And there's only a few of us at this point. In fact, when Swami Kriyananda himself, in 2009, before he held an initiation, he changed himself from the Swami orange that he'd worn his whole life to a blue color. He lived at that time in Assisi, Italy, and he was well known in town. And Assisi often has ecumenical events. So Kriyananda was invited to one of those ecumenical events, and he showed up in blue. And he'd always shown up in orange before. And someone said to him, "Why are you wearing blue?" He said, "Well, I've started a new renunciate order." And they asked him, "How many members does it have?" He said, "1." He was just so at ease with himself. There it is. And then, we've grown. I don't know if there's more than 100 in the whole world at this point, at the most. And there's also novice, a novice for married couples and novice for traditional celibate single monks and nuns also. It's a long plan, and it's actually completely separate from Ananda. Even though it primarily exists within Ananda at this point, it really has nothing to do. It's not discipleship to our path. It's not our practices. It's an attempt to bring that traditional order into something that is not so much of what is asked of the Swamis in the traditional order, they just ignore now. And that's not entirely wholesome. The heart of it is still there. But it just needs to be modernized, so to speak, not in any way that affects the dedication of it. I mean, it's a very serious, it's a vow of total renunciation. But in our age, you don't have to live outside under a tree. The renunciation is much more internal. Like, who am I? What is of value to me? What is of lasting value? What do I commit my energy to? But still, even if one lives in comfort, one has to be completely unidentified and unattached to what's around you. It's God alone is what you have to stand for. And I took the vow in the first initiation, which was now 15, 16 years ago, but it was my natural next step. Thinking of it, I had lived from 0 to 20, I'd lived 20 to 40, I'd lived 40 to 60. I was looking at 60 to 80. And I wondered how I was going to make that last quarter as dynamic as everything that had come before. And I was really literally just thinking a great deal about how am I going to do this? And then Swami had this inspiration, and it was just, well, that's how I'll do it. I'll just move one more step, out of limited identification, one more step into infinity. I love it.
You take the vow. What is that part of? How does that work?
Well, in the age we live in, there's a website. It's called A Renunciate Order for the New Age. There's a book that Swami Kriyananda wrote about what real renunciation is and how to be a real renunciate in this age. For example, you can't live nowadays without handling money because there's no society that would support you. You know, in ancient India, all the householders knew that it was good karma for them to support the monks, so they did. But you know, if I walked down the street here with a begging bowl, it would not end well. Let's just put it like that. So, but if I have to handle money, how do I relate to it? What do I think about it? If I have to even own property, how do I relate to it? How do I think about it? And the vows has words in it, like I no longer exist as a separate entity, but I offer myself unreservedly into the great ocean of awareness. Nothing is mine, no talent, no success, no achievement is my own, but everything is thine alone. And I offer not only the fruit of my labor, which has long been there, not only the fruit of my labor, but the labor itself. Everything that comes through me, nothing belongs to me. Everything belongs to God.
The reason I was asking is because we spoke about some of your like backstory and the teaching and stuff. And I don't think we gave it enough context. So I don't know if that was an oversight on my part, but a lot of people are interested in people who renunciate or dedicate their lives to particular things, and I think it's just really interesting. So when you say the renunciations or the things that you've committed to this, what does that look like? Like how much? You know, I'm guessing I can't just go on a website tomorrow and.
Well, you won't find it of it me personally, but you'll find in general, it's very personal. After the first initiation. In Italy, many of us, some people came from India and from Europe, from the US. It was in Italy, but we converged. We, meaning sort of the founding people who'd been with Ananda for a very long time. The next morning, we asked Swami all kinds of questions. I mean, we asked him questions like, this is silly, but this is my natural color hair. But many of the women who took that vow had dyed their hair to keep it from looking gray. So we actually asked Swami the question, now that I'm Nayaswami, should I still dye my hair? You know, should I still wear jewelry? Just questions that were just so basic. And to every question, Swami said, do as you feel. Do as you feel. This is not an institutional, or there's an order, but the very nature of it is, it's up to me, it's between me and God. And I decide what I need, how I need to move through the world in order to fulfill that promise. There's certain for the Nayaswamis, it's a celibate order, but nonetheless, you know, many married couples come to a platonic relationship. He did not. If you're a married couple and you intend to have children or are raising children, you can't even be a novice in the order, because it's inappropriate to be that impersonal when you're raising children. So for the most part, if a married couple becomes a Nayaswami, they're older when they make that decision, with very few exceptions, a few exceptions, but mostly not. Okay, my backstory, that's what you were actually asking me. I was a perfectly ordinary person. I got married when I was 19 to the person who introduced me to the spiritual path. We came together to be at Ananda. But it wasn't for him. He didn't connect with Swami the way I did, and he's a very solitary person. He actually thought community was about the worst idea he'd ever heard of. He just couldn't imagine having that many people in your life. But he was a very, very serious spiritual person, and I felt called to a monastic life, and so amicably, with great respect, we each went our separate ways. He actually went to India and became initiated by a very great woman saint who was there at that time, Anandamayi Ma. He actually was the first Westerner to be personally initiated by her. I mean, he had a very, that's who he's been. But it wasn't for us to get together. I had 10 years as a monastic in Ananda. I married, and I was married for almost 30 years. But then my path became very solitary because I had to start writing, I had to start traveling, and ours was a marriage of service And so as long as when my service became solitary, the fundamental basis, and we were both Nayaswamis at the time, the fundamental basis of the partnership just wasn't there. So he's still involved. I mean, completely, still as dedicated as he ever was, but it didn't work for us to work in partnership. That was 10 years ago. And just before, close to the time we separated, this became my life again. So it's like I've been in and out of marriage twice, and in and out of renunciation twice, formal monasticism twice. But I think this is really who I am.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about was finding happiness, and I think that's the question that we get a lot is, how do I find happiness?
Absolutely. We did a film about Ananda. We called it Finding Happiness.
I love that. Okay, this is perfect then. So the one thing I wanted to start with though is how would you define happiness, and what's the nature of happiness and bliss, and like what's the I think we spoke about it briefly, like that's true human nature is to want bliss, but yeah, in your words, I'd love to hear a bit more. Yeah.
People equate happiness with pleasure. People equate happiness with lack of challenge. People equate happiness with getting what I want. And, it feels good, but in the end, everything it's ephemeral, because this world has changed and difficulties come to us. So happiness, as most people think of it, is conditional on circumstances being the way I want them to be. And terrible things happen in this world. People grow ill, people die, people fall into hard times. So if your happiness is conditional, then you may have it for a while, but you can never rely on it. You'll always be insecure. And a part of you knows that you'll never be able to hold on to it. But our true nature is blissful. And I mean, I'm using these words randomly because they don't really have specific meaning. But true happiness is understanding that I am part of a greater reality, that greater reality is always operating for my good, that even when the most unspeakable bad things happen to me, if I respond to them with courage and receptivity and interest in what expansive thing I can learn, even in the worst times, you're still happy. Because you have this deeper level of knowing that I'm doing that which is right for me and will reward me in the end with freedom. True happiness is really freedom. And that means not freedom to only get what I want. That means to be always free inside no matter what happens. Free to choose happiness. It sounds like, from the outside, it sounds like you're losing. When I say the Nayaswami is a celibate order, people just go like that. But Mahatma Gandhi, who was one of the most disciplined, rigorously renunciate humans on the planet, and he documented all his renunciation, he said, never give up a pleasure until you replace it with a higher pleasure. And that is the rule, that you when you are moving toward true happiness, people get very twisted. They think the more I suffer, and Christianity could have been based around the resurrection, which it is, but the symbol is the crucifixion. So the story is how much he suffered, not the fact that he totally transcended all that suffering. So what we need now is not to think of renunciation as loss, but it's an investment in freedom, because now I'm not bound by any conditions. But you can't do that by suppressing. You can't do that by thinking I should do it. You have to do it because you genuinely feel happier this way. And if you don't genuinely feel happy, you should back up a little until you're authentically where you need to be.
Is there a time delay on knowing whether it's happiness or not? Like, will we know straight away, or does it take a little time?
It's about faith. If you've had enough experience that tells you that things are not always what they seem, if you had enough experience to realize that even when I thought it was the wrong thing, it turned out to be the right thing, Even when I thought I could never get through it, it turned out to be really a blessing. And it was, quote, a blessing in disguise. If you have enough of those, if you add up enough of those experiences, when the next one comes, because they do keep coming, you say, okay, I know this story. I've been here before. This is the part where I'm absolutely miserable and I think I will die of grief. But I know what comes after that. And so you never really lose a sort of deep level of inner joy, which is not the bubbly, happy sort of thing like that. But the joy is, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm on the right path. I know that God loves me. I know that whatever is happening for my highest good. And you can still be stretched out on the floor, unable to get up because you're broken by grief. But even there, you still know that the end of this story is going to be something I want. And that's a very, very different kind of joy than just, it feels good.
When people hear bliss, I think when I hear bliss, I get this sense of what that feels like. But I think some people just think it's calmness, like it's...
And they think that calmness means low energy, and they think that calmness means dullness, and they think that calmness means deprivation, that you're just too lazy to go out and get a drink or whatever it is, pick up a woman or pick up a man, whatever it might be. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means, why would I do that? Think how many things in your life you used to want to do, but you don't want to do anymore. And you don't have to discipline yourself not to do them. You just don't want them. I mean, I've been a vegetarian for 50 years. The last meat that I ate was a hamburger from this little hamburger stand not very far away from here. And that night, I dreamt about that hamburger with the bun and the whole thing, and it was moving through my veins. It was the weirdest dream, and it just moved through my veins all night long. And trust me, I've never been near another hamburger again. It just was like, I don't like this. And other people, wow, let's go get hamburgers, let's eat them. And I don't have to say, no, I mustn't. I just couldn't if I tried. And that's what happens. And you may not even imagine that you would ever give up something that is so pleasing to you now, but you give it up when you realize that something else is more pleasing. Just like that. An athlete, a serious athlete training, a serious musician practicing, it's like they miss out on a lot of things. But and they don't like missing out on a lot of things. But what they get for that temporary disappointment, they get such an enormous fulfillment that they're happy even doing this, even if they're unhappy.
I love that example because, it's worth it.
That's exactly it. So I deny my impulses now, but then I gain mastery. I gain freedom. I'm no longer compelled by habit. I'm no longer bereft when my desires aren't fulfilled. I mean, this is the philosophy of it, and it's true. It's very simple. It's true.
Can we push for bliss? Can we... The same way that we seek happiness, is that the same way you would seek bliss?
The path is not about, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to get. The very thought of doing it for what you get is contrary to the method that is required in order to get what you want.
Which is tough.
You just have to, I no longer exist as a separate entity. I offer myself into the great ocean of awareness. You make me a channel for your blessing. Help me to be serviceful. How can I love more? And those are the questions you ask. And you know that if I can fulfill those desires, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all this will be added unto you. Not necessarily in that form, but what you really seek behind it. Because what we're all seeking in everything else is everlasting bliss. And we just, for now, this is the best we can see. And so we take it where we can find it, and then we find out if it satisfies.
What's the downside of chasing the hedonistic sort of lifestyle of the fun things that we want to do and constantly living from thing to thing?
Well, the downside of it is the experience itself. The downside is it. However, if you don't notice that, then I couldn't say what the downside is. The downside is, really, how much fun is this? And the other side of it is the body gets old. The body gets old. And the handsome, dashing Romeo, who doesn't notice that he's gotten old and he's always hitting on the really young women. He does. That's the downside of it. You define yourself by something ephemeral, and then it goes away from you. But if that's how you've defined your happiness, you don't have happiness anymore because it was so ephemeral. I invested in something that was just going to last a minute, or if it lasts 30 years. When you're, I'm 80 almost, not quite. I'm only 78, but I like the number 80 better. I'm almost 80. I wasn't always. I was 20. When I was 20, 80 was 100. It was 190. It was a million years. But now I am. Weird, isn't it? And what was sensible then, now, but even then, because I became serious early, I could just tell. The past lives, been through it. But the other side of it is, let me just pause for a second. You're making experience the criteria for your values, but you have to honestly introspect and pay attention to the result. The other side with it is you often get sick, you age too quickly, you lose your vitality, and so you've spent a lifetime of energy in 15 years, and then you limp along after that. Your consciousness can become coarsened, and you're not refined anymore. You often lose things that are valuable to you because you're so busy chasing the next big experience. Your children, your relationships, your parents, you just find out. And if you don't find out, I love this story of this woman, a woman artist. She was 90, and she'd lived an extremely bohemian lifestyle with lots of lovers and, just had a really great time. She's 90 now, and she looks 90. And she says, when, let's see, how does she put, when a handsome young man walks into the room, she said, my response to him is the same as it's always been. His response to me, however, is quite different. She was good-humored enough to see, well, it worked for a while, but it doesn't work now. But she had other reasons for happiness. But if she had none, can you imagine how sad and bitter she'd be? And then when she's born the next time, she'll just rush right into the same thing unless she remembers.
I've been getting tons of messages asking about my health protocols ever since I did the world's heaviest marathon. The experience took a toll, and getting back to optimal health has been an absolute journey. That's where Marek Health have been absolutely essential. Their approach is beyond quick fixes. It's about long-term health and performance. They work with medical professionals to create personalized, evidence-based plans tailored to your needs, using pharmaceutical-grade treatments and cutting-edge diagnosis. Whether it's TRT, peptides, supplements, or like me, getting full health analysis to get you back on track, Marek Health provides everything that you need. And it's not just for athletes. If you're an entrepreneur or businessman like me, you might want that renewed focus, clarity, and energy. That's when Marek Health can get your brain performing at its peak. From comprehensive blood work to customized health plans, Marek gives you the tools to optimize your life. If you're ready to take control of your health, go to marekhealth.com and use code Mulligan for 10% off. The link's down below. I can't recommend them enough. And if you just wanted to get started, I would go and get your blood work done. Go get assessed, find out where they can help you. Use the link down below for 10% off using code Mulligan.
I want to talk about our paid partnership with BetterHelp. As you guys are aware, I've always been super open about my mental health, anxiety, depression. For a long time, the way I would deal with that is by burying those emotions, working really hard, running hundreds of miles, and burying those feelings deep down inside. That's why over the last 2 years, I have stuck to online therapy. Weekly online therapy, and it's been absolutely incredible. It was a massive weight off my shoulders. I know I'm not the only person who feels like this, but sometimes it can feel like you are, and you can feel super alone in that anxiety, that depression. And then we have to add the mix of social media in there. For somebody like myself, I'm on social media all the time for work, but so many other people look on there and see these highlight reels of people's lives that's just not true reality. All of these things can be super overwhelming. For a lot of people, we decide to keep it to ourselves. We think we can battle through, we can push through. That's why I turned to online therapy, and you can too with BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a credentialed therapist who can help navigate whatever you're going through. It's an online platform, so you can do your sessions from wherever feels comfortable. And if the first therapist isn't a right fit, you can switch at no extra cost. Most people using BetterHelp are looking for support with anxiety, and 69% report improvement after just 6 weeks. Therapy helped me shift my perspective, process things in a way I couldn't do alone, and actually start feeling lighter. If you've been thinking about therapy, this might be the right sign to give it a go. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/Mulligan Brothers for 10% off your first month of therapy. Let BetterHelp rule your anxiety, so anxiety doesn't rule you. Let's get back to the video. You know, people who invest in the highs, like, and chase those highs, they usually, I feel, invest in the lows as well. Like they find themselves in the lows quite badly. And is that what required to have a realization, like a self-realization that this isn't what I need to do? Like, do they need to hit that kind of rock bottom to?
Oh, well, all of the 12-step programs talk very strongly about you having to hit rock bottom before you're willing to put out the energy to change. You have to experience the ephemeral nature of it, and then you have to decide whether the high is worth it. And it's just completely individual. I mean, if you're not in that person's vibration, you think that it's not worth it. If you're in their vibration, they're going to make up their own mind. This is people's, if we just talk about addictions, this is the loved one outside of the addiction who cannot understand why the addict doesn't realize how much he's hurting, how much he's hurting or she's hurting, how much she's hurting everyone else. They just don't know it. You don't know it until you know it. And then you can't imagine how you didn't know it before now.
You know, the feeling of helping other people, like it's such a wonderful, fulfilling feeling. But is there any downside to doing too much of that? Like, or investing too much into that?
Well, it's all a question of authenticity. It's all a question of being actually in tune with a higher vibration, a higher level of guidance, rather than just compulsively trying either to earn your own value or trying to fix the world, or, you know, just getting too embroiled in ways that are spinning too much about, even though you're being selfless because of me. I mean, you're being selfless for your own reason. That's quite different than being an instrument of the light and just trying to uplift. And it's a stage on the journey. You start out with a truly altruistic desire, and then you get a little too identified with being altruistic, and then you get a little confused. And so everything is course correction. You have to just keep going. But the end of true freedom is self-forgetfulness. We think it's self-perfection. We think we're going to just absolutely get myself in order and I'll do everything right and I'll never have a bad thought, you know, just whatever. And we make ourselves crazy and we become totally self-preoccupied, which is the exact opposite of just letting go of this little identification and identifying with the great flow. It's just self-forgetfulness. It's just, I don't even remember that, you know, that I have a separate identity. I'm just the flow of energy of what I'm doing. The book I'm writing, the meal I'm cooking, the people I'm enjoying, whatever it might be. It's just a flow of energy, and isn't it wonderful? And it's not what about me, what about me? When I was 18, and I got the book by Vivekananda, which was the first spiritual thing I read, he said, don't think about yourself and you'll be happy. That was one of the aphorisms that really struck me. I thought, what else is there to think about? It was just totally bewildering to me. And I wasn't selfish, but I always knew where I stood in any context. And basically, I always calculated my own advantage, not for selfish reasons, but to have more fun. What would be more fun for me? So I was just my mind was always spinning about where I fit. And it wasn't actually, after I moved to Ananda, I had a job for a couple of years. I was running the retreat kitchen. I was cooking for 30 or more people, 40, 50, sometimes even very large groups. 3 meals a day, 6 days a week. I had one assistant, and God bless her, she wasn't quite mentally normal, so she wasn't much of an assistant. Neurodivergent is the word they use. Very sweet, but not so competent. I cooked 3 meals a day for all those people. On the 7th day, I drove a big truck into town and filled it with groceries and drove it back to our place. I was never happier. Somebody actually said to me, "How are you?" And I was startled because I was so just into the flow of doing what I was doing that I just forgot to ask, "How am I doing?" I was just doing it. And that was my first taste. That was real freedom. That was when I began to figure out, I've got this whole thing wrong. This is how you do it. You serve, you love, you flow, you're dynamic, and then that becomes you. That's the most incredible thing. That's who you become.
I think that's such a hard sell
Oh my
to
gosh,
people.
yes. Oh yes. Are we talking about whether anybody likes this story or not? No, of course not. Of course not. However, this is what the saints and the masters tell us. And their consciousness persuades us. You see, I became persuaded because I met Swami Kriyananda, and I felt this immense joy. When I first met him, we were in this big tent. I was as far from him as it was possible to be. I was in the last row. He began to speak. He was about an inch from my face. I mean, he was, I don't know how many feet, 25 or 30 feet away from me, but his consciousness just completely enveloped me because he had no boundary. And I realized everybody else I knew was about this big. And all of a sudden like this. And, oh my gosh, it was so joyful. It was just this unbounded joy. I knew him for 45 years. It was always true. Even when we were in the most miserable circumstances and he was having to face the toughest challenges, underneath it, it never went away. And I thought, that's what I want. That's absolutely what I want.
So is the question of how do I find happiness, is it the wrong question to be asking?
No. It's exactly the right question to be asking. And then you just have to pay attention and then watch your experience, be absolutely authentic, and then just see what happens. Look, a friend of mine who was very serious on this spiritual path was also addicted, I think, both drugs and sensuality and a whole lot of other things. They were not so wholesome. And at the same time, he was super serious about the path. One of the instructions that Paramahansa Yogananda gave was, if you're going to do something, even if it's not the right thing, take God with you. Just don't feel ashamed. The way I always translate it, if you're going to sin, just sin enthusiastically in public, because it's one thing to do something that's not good for you. It's another to get a huge guilt complex and a shame complex about it. So my friend said, and masters, as we call Yogananda, he said, my guru said, if I'm going to do something, wouldn't matter what it is, just bring him along for company. So he said, so as a result, I took my guru to a lot of places I don't think he would have gone on his own. That's how he put it. But as a result, all he was just having that life. He wasn't crazy, guilty, ashamed, thinking he was going to hell. He was just taking his guru to some interesting places. And they had some interesting experiences. And then over time, he lost interest in that life. It was more dramatic than that, but over time, it just resolved itself. But if he had just been guilty and ashamed and tried to shut, God out of it, I think it'd be there still. He just stopped enjoying it. The consequences were were worse than the pleasures, basically.
Inside, you said you used the word entrepreneur. I'm curious in what context you meant.
Well, we're sitting in this patio of this beautiful temple. We were inside the temple. Over in this other building over here, there's a whole Ananda school called Living Wisdom School. Another location, there's Living Wisdom High School. We have a community. We also have a beautiful big bookstore, a book and gift store in another part of the area here. None of this existed in this form. And we had the embryo of it. We had a small store and we had a very small center. Other people started it. And I and my companions in all of this, we just step by step tuned in, put out the energy, prayed deeply, followed our intuition, and just built it up like that. And I mean, entrepreneur is a real Silicon Valley word. But it's interesting. I find it interesting because sometimes you ask somebody in this area, what's your profession? They'll say, I'm an entrepreneur. And what they mean by that is I know how to have there be nothing and then make something out of nothing. And it's a particular kind of intuitive feeling about how you do it. And of course, it helps if you have some relationship to what you're building. But it's just, I know how to bring energy together. I know how to manifest it. I know how to be practical, and I'm willing to work at it. When we were starting our school, it was so much fun. This was 35 years ago. We had to persuade parents to enroll their children in a school that wouldn't exist unless they enrolled their children in the school. But this is Silicon Valley, and we were sitting with a group of parents, and they were expressing what you might call an understandable concern about this. And I suddenly realized, I said, oh, and I pointed to the rug in the middle of the room. I said, when you look at the rug, you just see a bare spot. I said, we see a school. We see it. We know it's there. And then there was this other man in the room, and he asked, I'm not the money person, but he asked the money person, the real practical person, all the details, where's the money coming from, how much? And he explained it and everything. We're loaning from one fund into the other and blah, blah, like this. And he loved it because that's what he did. He was an entrepreneur. He could afford to send his kids to our school because he made something out of nothing. And he saw kindred spirits. And we just did it. Yeah, it's fun. It's not for everyone, but it's and it's a generic skill. That's what I was going to say. It's a generic skill. And with the school here, I was a key person in it for, I think it was as long as the first 7 years. But then at a certain point, it ceased to be a startup. And it really became a school. I mean, it was always a school, but it got bigger, it got more complicated, more children, more grades, more parents. And all of a sudden you had to be an educator. And I was not an educator, I was an entrepreneur. So I had to go find a friend who didn't happen to live in California, but I went to where she was living, and I threw myself at her feet, and I pleaded with her to come and be an educator, because she really was one. At that point I dropped back because it wasn't my project anymore in the same way.
What are the key characteristics that you see in entrepreneurs, like successful entrepreneurs?
You have to have imagination, because you have to see something that isn't there already. You have to be creative in the best sense, which is creativity, and you have to have this kind of creativity. Well, if that didn't work, we'll try this. If that didn't work, we'll try this. If that didn't work, we'll try this. This is also, Swami said, the key to prosperity is creativity, which is, instead of just going down with the ship, you think of another way to do it and another way to do it. And you keep shifting. So you have to be very flexible. You have to be committed to what you're going toward, but you have to be very flexible as you go. You can't, if you get intuition about what's supposed to happen or just feel it's supposed to happen, you can't make a dogma out of that, because the nature of intuition is it's very fluid. And so you can't just say, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, even if you're just going down for the third time. You have to also define it more in terms of the energy you're trying to create, rather than the form that energy will take. So if you're making a school, it has to be a school. It can't be a beauty parlor or something like that. But you have an idea of what it should be, but it's more about the energy. We want the children to feel like this. We want the teachers to feel like that. We want the spirit to be this way. Building up this temple was the same thing. We knew what we wanted it to feel like. And we were always trying to make it feel that way, a place where people felt at home, where there was a lot of laughter, where it was serious, but not solemn. Where odd and unusual things could happen, and it would just be where there was a lot of creativity and self-expression. And you start there and you keep focusing on that, and then that creates the right form around it.
Where does the resilience stem from when the things are going wrong then?
From your bone marrow, probably. It comes from a feeling that this is what I'm really supposed to be doing. It comes from a feeling that I'm doing my best, and maybe my best is really going to fail, but I've done my best. What else can I do? You can't be afraid of failing. You know, a lot of Ananda enterprises have not lasted. It lasts for a while, or then it just doesn't happen. The karma was to have that experience, not to build it into a success. But nonetheless, everybody grows from doing the best they can. I think the resilience comes from what choice do I have? You know, it's, as one of my friends said, it's not that easy to lie down and die. You lie down in order to die, and then you get hungry, you get lonely, you get a little restless. So you can't give up. Sometimes you have to admit defeat, but most of the time you just keep trying. And I know the other part of it. You have to constantly ask. Your intuitive prayer has to be every day. I was involved in a project that lasted for 18 months. It was a very big project. Even when it wasn't going our way, I was still affirming that we were going to continue. And Swami Kriyananda just one day just pulled the plug. He stopped the project, and I was full blast into the wall, and he just stopped for good reason. He was correct. But at the same time, I said, why? You know, why are we stopping? He said, well, I prayed this morning and I felt Master Yogananda telling me that you've done enough. It shouldn't go forward from this point. I said, I'm the one doing the project. Why didn't he tell me? Swami said, did you ask? I said, no. And then he just went, what did you expect? I just assumed, despite all the obstacles, that I was just supposed to push through, and I never stopped and really centered myself and said, okay, new development, new direction, or am I supposed to continue? Swami asked the question and got a very clear answer, which turned out, in fact, to be correct. But I didn't ask, so I didn't get it.
I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that journey at the start is so difficult, the deciphering whether to keep going and if it's a worthy cause versus just bashing your head against the wall. It's really hard to make out.
And there's no dogma that'll save you. But you have to practice when it's easier, you see. You have to have been, from the beginning, you have to have been trying to tune in. You have to have been praying. You have to try to be an instrument of a higher vision. You have to be attentive that you don't get yourself wrapped up in it in a way that's not wholesome, so that as the stakes escalate, you have some muscle that you can apply to a deeper question. And that's the part that I hadn't done. Yes, but it's very, very hard. So you don't really have to worry because there's no ultimate failure. Yeah, I mean, you put yourself way out there and you fail, it's embarrassing. There's no question about it. Global humiliation is what I call it, and it happens periodically. I've been through quite a few cycles, especially we're a worldwide community, and everybody knows everybody. It's a really tight family, even though we're all over the planet. So, you know, when you really mess up in a really big way, everybody knows.
Given that you've started, like, maybe we could call them businesses or enterprises and these different things, you've started so many. Looking back now,
so many. I don't want to exaggerate, and I've had really good partners, because I'm good at energy. Yeah. My partners have been good at money, yeah. And my partners have been good at strategy. I just generate a lot of energy, and my partners are better at using it.
Do you have to find the partners, or will they find it? If you're putting out the right energy, will they come? Partners
are tricky. It's karma. You just do your best. There's no, I wish I could give you, like, you do this and that will happen, you do this and that will happen. If you're attuned, things happen.
And the trust in others with something that you've got, you know, you're building, you're making, you're putting a lot of work into. Where does the trust come from? Is that a feeling, a sense?
See, I trust God. I trust that if I'm sincere, even if I'm stupid, and even if I make really bad decisions, if I'm sincerely trying, and it doesn't turn out right, and even if it turns out that it was my stupidity that caused it to go wrong, which in many cases it has been, I trust that it had to happen. That if if it wasn't going to be helpful to me, it wouldn't have happened. So even though on one hand I'm mortified or depressed, on the other hand, if God could take me to freedom by any other route, I think more of Divine Mother. If Divine Mother could take me home by an easier route, she would take me by that route. So if this is what's happening, this must be the fastest way home.
Yeah, looking back at some of the projects that you've worked on, is anything in retrospect stand out as to something that would be successful versus maybe some of the failures that you'd had?
No, the failures were more personal. In this context, because people I've worked with have been so talented. If I'd been on my own, if I'd been totally alone, I don't know what would have happened. But I don't have all the talents that are needed. That's an absolute fact. I'm very good at pulling energy together. I'm a good saleswoman. I'm a good fundraiser. I can get people excited. I can make it fun. But what you do after that, I think that goes to someone else. And I have interesting ideas.
Yeah, that's tough when you've not. So fill the gaps.
You have to fill, or if you're the only one there and you have to do it all. Sincerity is the most important thing. Sincerity of intention. And I'm doing my best, and I'm doing it out of a sincere desire to do a good thing. And if I'm all you have to work with, Divine Mother, you're just going to have to do your best with the material at hand. I've been through a lot. If you talked to me 25 or 30 years ago, I wouldn't be able to talk like this because I was more twisted.
You mentioned your age, 78. I have to ask, and the audience would shoot me in the foot if I didn't. How have you, you have such a clarity of mind, you're very youthful, for 78,
Honestly, I don't know. I have been very attentive to my health since before I was 20. And I've lived a very healthy life. I've lived a healthy life in terms of diet, in terms of exercise, in terms of, diet and exercise, in terms of hydration, and periodically I do I grow wheatgrass for a few years, or take turmeric powder, or what was the other one? Spirulina, seaweed, whatever. I can't even think what you call kelp, whatever that stuff is. So periodically I feel you have to do something unpleasant and difficult, and it almost doesn't matter what it is. You just have to prove that you're sincere. So if you look at it on a physical level, apparently I have good genes, I guess I have good genes. And there's been so much that's interested me. And I always want to, I'm wide awake, and I'm extremely interested in all the things around me. But after that, after I've said all of that, I have no idea. I haven't the faintest idea. The joke about my hair not turning white, why doesn't my hair turn white? I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm just going to keep taking what God gives me, and I'm going to try to give it back. And I'll just keep doing that until I don't have any energy left to do it. We'll see. One medical psychic told me I would live to be 103, which was actually really good advice at the time, because my parents both died in their early 80s. So I've always thought that I was on the end of the story here. And I realized, and actually this is part of an answer, I realized I was kind of cutting back. I was thinking, well, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to think about this. I don't have to really face that. I don't have to deal with this. I only have a few years left. And then all of a sudden I had 30 years left. And it was like, wow, I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to cut back. I have to be full on because I have 3 more decades. So I have no idea if I have those, but it really was an attitude adjustment that I really needed to have that spoken to me, because I could see that I was shutting down. And that doesn't work for me. Swami Kriyananda had very poor health, especially to the end. He was 86 when he died, but he was 100% present at all times and just as involved. And I don't mean in the same way, because he was much older, but he remained utterly open. And I thought, and I look at that, that's how I want to be. What makes people old is they fall into habit, and the habits get more and more out of date. I mean, I'm still comical in terms of having to ask my young friends to do something with this stupid phone that won't do what I want it to do. But I have one, so I'm still there.
You know, there's some of the teachings that you follow, like what's the philosophies and teachings around death?
Around death? Oh, death. I love death. I mean, I have given various programs on it, and I say I love it in the sense because it's such a glorious and interesting part of the story. And it defines everything. Because the fact that we don't last, and the fact that either we or the people we love could disappear at any moment seems relevant to me. And in the story of the life of the Buddha, his father tried to prevent him from renouncing the world by keeping him away from knowing that people got old, that people got sick, and that people died. And then the Buddha snuck out from under his father's care, and he went out into the city, and he was totally shocked. People get old, they get sick, and they die. And he says, what are we doing here, pretending that this doesn't happen? So I think it's just a wonderful part of the story that we're just temporary residents here, and it's a tremendous incentive. I think of it to stay current, and I'm almost obsessive about it. If something needs to be done, I really want to do it now. I don't want to do it in the morning, because what if I die before the morning? I don't want unfinished business. If I still have something I need to say, or an apology I need to make, or a compliment I need to give, I want to do it, because it could be over tomorrow. I really don't know. And because I know reincarnation, I don't want to have debts that I'm going to have to pay next time, because next time will also be now, because this is next time. You know, this is what I put off the last time. But death itself, we just move out of this dimension into another one, and everything that we are stays with us. All the love that we have is still there. The form changes. And as one of my dear friends said, her husband died suddenly. He went out for a run. He said, I don't feel well. He sat on the curb and he had a heart attack and passed. So it was no warning. She said, she said, he's still with me. It was easier to communicate when he had a body, she said. But he's still with me, and our love is just the same as it was. But it was easier to communicate when he had a body. And when people finish their story here, they go on to another wonderful story, just like when a child leaves home to go to college, or leaves the country they were born in to have an adventure in another country. They don't cease to exist, but they're doing something else. They're having another adventure. Death is just the same thing. We'll see them again. Everybody we love we'll see again. And depending how aware they are, they can also be very aware of us. We need to bless them and go on. And when I've been privileged to literally be next to people when they breathe their last, maybe a dozen, maybe 20 times, I'm not really sure now, including my own father. And when my father passed, his mind had gone soft in the last couple of years of his life. My mother had already died. When my father, when he really breathed his last, exhaled the last time, and he really wasn't there, I felt this surge of joy that was absolutely overwhelming. My father had no involvement in my spiritual life. This surge of joy, and I think my mother was there. They had 56 years together. They really loved each other. I just think he just saw her and he forgot everything else, or something. I was so blissful. I was there with my sister and my brother both. And the people in the facility where he was being cared for, he was very popular because he was super sweet. And they were, I mean, they see so much death. I was surprised. They were grieving, they were crying, they were trying to, they were very upset, which really surprised me. I was so happy. I was laughing. Finally, my sister punches me in the ribs and says, you have to respect the feeling of these people. You can't just keep laughing when they're weeping. I said, I can't help it. So I just sort of went off and isolated myself, but his happiness was so great. When another friend of mine died, I felt I felt a legion of angels just going over my head. And I just began to weep for joy. Oh my gosh, look where she's gone. And others have been quieter and less dramatic, but you still feel it. Oh, they've gone to another country. And I just think it has to be taken into account for my life ever since I was small. In fact, one of the huge motivating factors for me getting on the spiritual path, now that I remember, this when I was about 18, 19, the way I say it is I stayed up all night thinking about this, but that's how it felt to me. I don't know if I really did. And I kept visualizing my deathbed. And at that point, I didn't even know anybody who had died, what to speak of ever being by a deathbed. But it was interesting to me because the vision I had in that dream was very, very, very like what I experienced later, which is I was there and there were all these people who really cared about me, who were around me. Sometimes they were talking to me, sometimes they were just talking about where they're going to get lunch and where they were going to go out to, and then they would remember that I was dying and they would pay attention to me again. It's very real. And in the dream, my consciousness was just shrinking and shrinking, my ability to relate to any of those people. And many of them loved me deeply, in the dream, and I loved them, but it didn't make any difference. When you die, you just go into your own consciousness. They can still love you, but you're on your own, and you are who you are. They could create an atmosphere, but at a certain point, you have to let go. And I realized all I would have at that moment was who I had become through the course of my lifetime. And I had the word consciousness. What my consciousness was would be all that I would have. And I realized, why am I thinking about anything else? Because that's everything. And that didn't mean that I shouldn't participate and have as much fun as I could during my life, but my consciousness was all that would endure. So why invest in all the rest of this stuff, which is ephemeral? Sure, they're playthings, enjoy it. And I do. I travel, I like pretty places. I used to indulge a lot more, but it was always with the thought of the real story.
Just on reincarnation, because I think that obviously changes the idea of death quite a lot. Is reincarnation linear in terms of time? Like, are we like 1999, 2nd of July? Am I going off to a new place? Like, how does it work?
Well, one of our attorneys asked me that. Can you incarnate forward and backward in time? Can I go back and be in the 1800s? And I'd never thought of it, so I asked Swamiji before. He said, in the realm of time itself is an illusion. But when you're in the realm of time, which we're bound by it here, it's linear. You're bound by it. So the answer is you incarnate progressively in the perception of time. But you don't necessarily come back you can be in the astral world for hundreds of years, or you can be in the astral world for 2 days and then come back. People often reincarnate back into the same families. You were the grandmother and you died, and then you become your granddaughter's child, and many times people will say that. So you can come back quite fast and keep doing the same story, but the story progresses and you have to participate in that. It's not crazy random. Yeah.
No, I think it's just I've not really thought about it, like if it was linear or
Right. When that lawyer, I say lawyer because he was closely associated with us, but had nothing to do with her teaching. So when he asked me the question, I said, well, that's a good one, yeah.
I need to get back onto happiness. There was I feel like there's blocks and emotions that are sort of stuck because of wounds that we have, and how do we kind of like move through wounds and emotional blocks?
You're only knowing what you remember in this lifetime. You're not even thinking of the ones that happened before. I can only speak on a very long rhythm about my own life. I was driven. I was really driven for decades of my adult life I was always trying to run ahead of a great number of unresolved griefs and fears, none of which were in this lifetime. So there was no objective basis for it. There was just a kind of, and I didn't know that. I didn't realize until a few things happened to me that were too hard to stay ahead of. And when I finally couldn't stay ahead of anything, it's like everything caught up with me. And when it all caught up with me, it was not pleasant. And I really actually wondered if I'd ever be cheerful again. I actually called an astrologer and said, I've had a very fortunate life. Do I have to learn how now to have a terrible life? Because I don't know how to have a terrible life. So is this a temporary or a permanent condition? And they assured me that it was temporary, which it proved to be. But all of a sudden, I stopped being afraid of grief. I stopped being afraid of failure. I stopped being afraid of loss. By no means did I enjoy any of that. But I just realized, who did I think I was? That I was going to be immune to all of these things? What made me think that somehow my life alone would never be touched? I mean, what a ridiculous idea. And yet I was operating as if it was a reasonable idea. If I can just run fast enough and be strong enough and all of this, I'll never really have to experience this. But then when it all caught up with me, it was bad, but it was fine. I went through it. And even in the middle of it, I could remember, if there was another way to get home, Divine Mother would take me by that route. So here's one more just piece of advice, which I know that it's the fear of those feelings as much as anything as the feelings themselves. And fear, Yogananda said, fear is remembered pain and the anxiety that's going to come back again. But it is going to come back again. And we've already lived through it. We'll live through it again. God's love is stronger than anything that you may go through. But the other part of it is we're afraid a lot of times about certain feelings because we think, if this is true, then I'm going to have to, what will I do about that? And what I try to say is you need to separate the practical response to it from the feelings themselves. If you can just see that it's two different realities, if I can really just accept that I have a terrible fear of failure and I'm afraid to step forward because I just don't know what's going to happen, but I can't admit that. I have to just keep going here because I don't know what I'd do if I admitted that. Say, admit it. Okay, now this is what I'm working with. And then now what will I do about it? Maybe nothing. Maybe now I just know more what I'm feeling and what's motivating me. Maybe I have to change my whole course of action. Two separate decisions. People are in denial almost all the time because they don't know what they would do if they admitted that feeling. Two separate decisions. Know what you feel, know why you feel it, then decide what to do about it. This is the spiritual path. The spiritual path is the resolution of all of these. This is the definition of yoga, the neutralization of all these vortices of conflicting feelings in the heart. Big job. But if you don't do it now, you're going to do it now later, so you might as well do it now.
Just a quick interruption for the video, guys. As many of you know, we are independent creators and filmmakers, but there is a massive attack on us right now. Traditional media over the last few years has started to slowly die. They are no longer the independent voice that you first thought they were. That's why we've created Mulligan Brothers Patreon. We've built something special for our most dedicated supporters, and I want to break it down for you real quick. The supporter tier gets you ad-free early access to both video and audio versions of Mulligan Brothers interviews 24 hours before it goes public. The executive tier gets you everything that a supporter tier gets, plus more. Exclusive interviews and behind the scenes content, walk and talks, daily routines, unreleased interviews, the stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And finally, the executive producer tier. Everything from the supporter tier and the executive tier, plus exclusive perks.
access to our treatment packages, be the first to see which guests are coming up, and get insight into the topics we'll be discussing before anyone else. And you'll even get an executive producer credit on every single documentary that we make. So if you've ever wanted to support the Mulligan Brothers mission of inspiring change so we can go around the world and get these stories that nobody else will, this is exactly how you do it. Go to patreon.com/Mulligan Brothers or click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Join the community and help us inspire change. Let's dive back into the video.
We spoke yesterday about like a generational curse and like these things that are kind of left, and I think it's probably not something that I don't think I've mentioned it to the audience before. Maybe I have, but the audience knows about Jacob, and they know that I lost my son to stillbirth. He was my firstborn son. They might know about my mum's firstborn son, my oldest brother Jason. He was also a stillborn baby. I think what they don't know is that my mum's mum, my grandmother, her firstborn son was also a stillborn baby, and just it's always seemed a bit strange. Yeah, that's the case, coincidental.
But it's none of the stillbirths, including the third, which was your own Jacob. It's the karma of Jacob. It's the karma of Jacob's mother and Jacob's father. It isn't created. His karma was not created by the fact that your mother and your grandmother also had stillbirths. The fact that those babies were stillborn did not make Jacob stillborn. He was stillborn because his incarnation was going to last however many months it lasted in the womb, from conception to whenever he stopped. His spirit was making that body. The body would not have been formed if his spirit wasn't there. From the moment of conception, Yogananda says the sperm and ovum, a flash of light in the astral world, and the soul that is in tune with that flash of light rushes into the womb. So from that instant until whatever point it was when his spirit said, well, this was a short incarnation, but this one's over. At whatever point that took place and he withdrew, and then the body was still there, but it wasn't living, of course. But that was entirely the karma of, well, primarily the three of you who were really involved, and peripherally the rest of the family. And if it wasn't his karma, the fact that there were two more stillbirths 2 generations back could not have created it. The fact that it did happen like that is kind of it's very woo-woo. You don't know what to do with it exactly. People do talk about family DNA or something like that, but the DNA is created by the karma of the soul. The DNA does not control the karma of the soul. The soul chooses the DNA where the karma is there. And where there's this story, who knows? There's some kind of an alliance between the mother, the father, and the child, Jacob and Jacob's mother and you. Perhaps the fact that both mother and grandmother had stillborn children and went on to have other live births was a comfort to you. Maybe it gave them the capacity to comfort you in ways they would never have been able to comfort you before. So Jacob was kind enough to come where his father would be comforted. I mean, any of those beautiful explanations could be true. And it's an enormous complex tapestry with the warp and the woof. And the thread that manifests as this picture starts way over here. And when it finally comes to here, it can't be extricated from all the rest of this. And the weaving together is what makes the picture, and it can't be extricated. You can't cut any piece of it out. So you see, when you really feel that, you're still grief-stricken and sad, but there's this extraordinary symphony, this beautiful symphony that's going on behind it, which allows you to experience it on many levels at the same time. It's both tragic and also breathtakingly beautiful. The fact that this was the 3rd generation, it's like a poem, some kind of tragic elegy, but it's beautiful too.
I mean, it was a really My mum always says this to me, and she says it was the most tragic moment in her life was me losing Jacob, but it was also the most beautiful moment for her as well. And the full circle, I just say it for if people are listening, the idea that she didn't hold her son Jason, and it's the only regret she had in life, and she held Jacob. So it was like this really beautiful moment for her. So yeah, I guess there is something there for sure.
So there's the other side of it,
Yeah.
where Jacob was giving to his grandmother.
Yeah.
And who knows who they've been to each other.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely to think. Yeah.
If his death could be such a healing for her,
Oh, huge for my mum. Yeah.
you see what a gift that was. So what was good and what was bad? You get very confused when you just use simplistic explanations.
I feel so selfish because I have thought of it that way, but not in a way that it was how impactful or powerful it had been for my mum.
Well, it's beautiful and glad you know that we learn slowly. And when we finally see something, we don't know why we never saw it, but we just couldn't until that time. I mean, I have countless examples. She's like, how could I not have known that? But I didn't. I'm very forgiving of myself now. I used to be very hard with myself. Now I can just simply say, well, I'm not that good. That's just what's happening. Why did I think I was that good? I'm not. Before I used to act as if there was something, and of course there's something wrong with me. Surprise, surprise. I wouldn't have incarnated if I didn't have karma.
Well, I'm glad we spoke about that. Yeah, really beautiful. I'm really excited to be able to go back and talk to my mum about that as well.
I'm so happy for that.
She'll love that.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. The next conversation I'd love to have with my grandma as well is something that I really want to do. So
what a story! I mean, think of all the love that is being created here.
do you still think that given like my trying to tell that story, do you think communicating with Jacob is the best way to try and tell that story?
Well, in as much as you are a little blocked in how to do it, I think that would be a very interesting way for you to try to gain confidence and clarity, because it's his story and you've just thrown in some super interesting aspects of it. And so he might have some really good ideas. He may have been a great filmmaker in the past. You don't know.
Maybe that's where I got it from. I'm realizing I've kind of like completely gone off track of what I was the plan, which is lovely. Like, I don't mind that. That's fantastic. Makes for the best conversations. But I would love to make sure that I close it on this sort of happiness conversation. I think do you have any sort of essential keys to happiness? Like, is there essential keys to happiness?
I think sooner or later you have to develop a spiritual life, and you have to develop a profound spiritual connection with however you define it, but with the power that is greater than your own egoic self, and to understand that it's a living relationship. That's why Divine Mother works for me. A living relationship with a personal reality that loves you in ways that you can't even imagine. There was a great saint in France, Jean Vianney. If you only knew how much God loves you, you would die for joy, he said. But that's really what it's about. Just to know that we're not alone, that we have guardian angels and legions of angels, and those who love us who are on the other side, and the personification of God in Divine Mother and Heavenly Father and Guru and archangels, everything. And we're just surrounded. And until we really find our security, our sense of worth, our faith in that power, we'll always be a little bit afraid. And to that extent, we won't be happy.
You say guardian angels, and what do you mean when you say guardian angels?
Everybody who seems to know says that we all have guardian angels. Okay, just as we on this plane of consciousness find ways to be serviceful. And if you really want to be serviceful and be helpful, you want to do good things for people, and you do good things that are available to you on this plane of consciousness. when you die, you're still the same person. You still have, if you've had a strong desire to help, you still want to help. But maybe now you're a little more advanced, or your karma is a little different, and you want to help. So you're going to find ways to help. And all of us poor struggling mortals on the material plane, and are your guardian angels friends from the past who are just in the astral world now? Do you have the same guardian angel all through all your many incarnations? I don't know any of these, the answers to any of these interesting questions, but I know that we are being helped by conscious force that is personally interested in our welfare. And everyone who has the capacity to see that confirms that. I mean, all the saints and masters, the angelic beings are a realm, and they're there to help. They help in the astral world, they help in the physical world. When my friend Paula was dying, and she was an angelic being in a human body, and she was talking on the phone the last time talking to Swami, and she knew she was going to die within a day. It was a very conscious passing. And she said to him, when I get to the astral world, I hope they have a job for me, because I like to be busy. This is how she put it. And Swami said, Paula, I'm sure they'll make great use of you. Don't worry. And after she died, I felt her with me a lot. I said to Swami, I feel like Paula's following me around and telling me what to do. He said, of course. Like, she loved me. I loved her. She would want to help me. So the guardian angel is just an aspect of that. It's an individual conscious being who takes care of us. People who can see them, see them. And make a friend of your angel. Just like, okay, buddy, how are we going to get out of this? What are we going to do with that? What am I supposed to do now? Become receptive, and then those vibrations will come into you.
Okay, yeah, I think this is the one to to wrap it up on, is that once you find bliss, then how do you live and maintain bliss? Like, how do you stay in that state of bliss?
Until you're absolutely free and have resolved all karma, it will come and go. Just like any mood, you can be happy for a certain period of time, and then other karma comes up and you have other issues to face. As you progress, your capacity to hold on to that state stays with you, even in the face of very difficult karma. This is what I observed in Swami Kriyananda. He had tremendous challenges in his life, and tremendous betrayals and things like that happening. And he had to go through them. But deep within himself, he always knew that he was doing his guru's work, that his guru was with him, that Divine Mother loved him, and it was all for a purpose. So the primary way that you can hold on to it is not that the mood never leaves you, but you always know that everything is happening as it is supposed to happen. A great deal of our suffering is when we rebel against it, or we punish ourselves because we were so stupid and incompetent to have it happen. And if you can take that out of the equation, which is this is interesting, this is not what I wanted, this is unexpected, but I will take Divine Mother's hand and just walk through it. That's the only way to hold on to it. Because that's why I was saying the foundation of it has to be an awareness of ourselves as part of a greater reality. And once that awareness is deep, even if there are ups and downs, there's a bedrock underneath it that is always strong. There were two Dutch women who were Christians who were in Amsterdam, in Holland somewhere, not that city. They helped Jews. They were eventually condemned to a concentration camp. And the older sister, who was the more saintly, according to the younger sister, she knew she was going to die there. She knew her younger sister was going to live. She knew that the younger sister would go out and speak. And Betsy said to Corey ten Boom, Betsy said, you must tell people, and they were deeply Christian, you must tell people about the love of Christ, that no matter how deep the darkness, the power of the love of Christ is deeper still. And then Betsy said to Corey, and they will believe you because you've been here. We have to just know that no matter what's happening, the love of God is deeper still.
Wonderful note to end on. That's really powerful stuff.